Welcome, fellow humans. Today I'm going to talk about the social effects of face blindness. You can see my previous video about what face blindness is and how it affects my perception of the world and of people. But this video is just going to focus on how it affects social interactions. Because it is really, really difficult to get to know people or to interact with people when you cannot trust that you will be able to identify them. So growing up, I didn't know that face blindness was a thing, so I didn't know that I had it. I didn't know why other people could recognize each other so easily and why it was so difficult for me. So I mostly blamed myself. I assumed that I was doing it wrong or I wasn't trying hard enough. I did eventually figure out that when I'm introduced to people, I really, really shouldn't use their clothing as a way of remembering who they are to recognize them again, because that would help within that single day, but obviously the next day they're wearing different clothes and it's completely useless. Unfortunately, I had to mainly use hair and hairstyles, and some people change this more than others, so that's not as reliable as I would like either. And so sometimes I would get to know somebody and then see them again and be able to tell who they were, but other times I'd have an interaction and I'd get to know somebody and it would be nice, they seemed like a great person. I'd be in a situation where I could see them again and I had no idea who it was, so I just gave up on trying to interact with them more to try to build more of a friendship. It was just so much easier to not try to socialize that much than to fight against the fact that the next day they'd be a different person and I'd have to figure out who they were. It was particularly difficult because I didn't know I had face blindness, so I couldn't tell people. I couldn't say, I'm sorry, but the part of my brain that identifies people doesn't work right, and I need you to let me know who you are when I see you again. And not just tomorrow, but forever. and maybe after several years, I will be able to identify you, or maybe not, because I have misidentified family members. I have had horrible fear when trying to meet people in public places that I might not be able to identify them because there are just too many people and they don't have unique enough features. I really found it comforting when I knew somebody who had really unusual features. Like, I have a friend who is significantly taller than average and has dark curly hair. And that's uncommon enough that I can usually pick him out in a crowd. And it especially helps that he's really tall because you can scan the crowd and, he's above it. So things like that are really helpful. But obviously, most people are going to look somewhat average because that's kind of what average means. And I don't want to pick my friends based on how atypical they are, but it's really difficult to keep having that context. And a lot of people are really judgy. They will think that because you don't identify them, it means you don't care about them, or that you're just an inconsiderate and rude person. And so all these negative judgments can get placed on me when I simply can't tell who people are, and it's not personal. And even when someone isn't doing that, I worry that they're thinking that. And they might not be. They might be a great, understanding, compassionate person, but I'm so used to that framework from society that it's something that I have to combat. So I have a lot of social anxiety issues around identifying people, especially because, as I said, I couldn't explain it to anyone. And I would sometimes have these nightmarish situations. Like, I remember vividly the horror of my teacher saying that I was supposed to pass back graded homework assignments. So these were assignments with each of the kids' names on it, and I was supposed to give the paper to the correct student. And I had no way to do it. And it was this moment of panic of, what am I supposed to do when I've been given this impossible task, and pointing out that it's impossible is rude. So I just started passing out the papers randomly, and when the first person complained that it wasn't theirs, I said, just pass it toward the person. And I was like, just pass these toward the right people, because the other kids in the class knew each other. So they could do that, but I couldn't. And if there had been more awareness, if my teacher had known that I had faced blindness, I am sure my teacher would have dealt with that differently, might have even set up the class differently. And so I'm really glad that awareness and understanding of face blindness has been significantly increasing in my lifetime, because people who struggle with it used to have very few options, and now if you simply tell people, I have this thing, it turns out a lot of people will actually go, oh, okay, I'll help you with that. And a lot of people will have already even heard of it, which is great. And so raising awareness of it helps everybody with face blindness. I am mostly done covering this, but I want to tell one cute little story from one of my family members, which is that she was working in a school and then COVID happened. So the teaching went remote. And for the first time, everything was super easy for her. It was just what she had always dreamed of, because all of the students had clearly labeled names whenever they talked to her. And so it's kind of neat the way some of these different ways of interacting are really handy for people who have different disability issues. I know that I have done a vast amount of socializing in my life online, and I think that it's a combination of having the clear identifiers consistently that I can use so that I can actually know who those people are. And when it's text-based, which a great deal of mine is, I don't have to deal with the auditory processing issues either, so I can actually know what people are saying. I am so used to faking so much of social interactions, and I kind of hate it, but I often figure it's better than letting people know how clueless I am and how much I'm missing, and it's really nice to have a method of interacting that takes all of that away and makes everything simple. And I know there are so many people who struggle with text-based interactions because you don't have the way that someone is saying it. It's easy to misread it. And yeah, that's a problem. But I have so much more understanding. I have fewer problems with it than I do with a lot of in-person interactions. So that's my story. And if you liked it, please click like. And if you'd like more similar content, then subscribe. If you know someone who might find it interesting, then of course share. But most of all, if you have any thoughts, questions, similar experiences, I would love to read your comments. Thank you.